Jesus is talking to his followers when he tells them, you must learn to love perfectly, not as the tax collectors love, or not as the non-believers love, which is, even non-believers greet their friends. Even the tax collectors love their family and are nice to their own family. But you have to do more than that. You are spiritual aspirants. You're on the path. Perhaps you're one of the 1,000 who seek me. If you're one of the 1,000 and seek me, then what should you do? Jesus says, be thee perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect, as God is perfect. He's not saying, just try to be perfect, see how you do. He's saying, be perfect. It's like a commandment. He's not giving you advice, you should be perfect. Nor is he saying, I bless you, someday you will be perfect. It's not a blessing, it's not advice, it's a commandment, be perfect. And so it sounds on the surface of it that it's such a nice passage. Oh, be kind to everybody, love everybody. But it's a teaching and it's an instruction that the great masters all tell us. We must be like our Father. We must be like our Mother in heaven. Not like the tax collectors, not like the imperfect human beings. In those days, Jesus' days, the tax collectors were despised. And so, how do we be perfect? Yogananda says that Jesus here and all the great masters, they put the responsibility for this perfection directly on our shoulders. He says, you have to become perfect. We have given you the teachings. We have given you the techniques. We have showed you what to do. We have given you an example of what to do. Now you also do this. That and loving God, attuning ourselves to the vibration of the Guru's devotion and technique together, that's what will allow you to do it. And how do we do that? Why is that so difficult? Because most of us are still identifying ourselves with being human. It's so easy to say, he just got angry. He didn't love that enemy. He just got angry. But that's such a human thing to do. It's so normal. He's saying, don't identify with that part of yourself. It's like saying, it gives you an excuse for bad behavior. And it gives you an excuse not to strive to be perfect. If you say, he's only human. And so we don't want to identify with that ego, human, limited side of ourselves. We want to identify with the fact that we are God's children. We are made in his image. We are already perfect souls. And that's what we want to identify with. Don't forget who we really are. The girl who works in your home perhaps is from a village. She never forgets she's from the village. At the holidays she goes home. She never forgets. Whenever chance she can, she's on the phone. She's connected to that village. She never forgets. She may be here in the house, cleaning, working, doing all kinds of things, taking care of the children. But she never forgets who she is. She's from that village, and she's from that family over there. We need to be identified with our spiritual heritage. That's who we really are. At every moment of time, in every atom of creation is vibrating the light of God, vibrating the perfect love of God, the perfect vibration of God. It's all around us. It's in us. It created us. And yet our egos seem to have taken just this little small portion of that vibration and separated itself. And somehow we've come to believe that that's really who we are. It's just this little bundle of self-definitions, this little limitation that the ego has put on itself saying, this is me, this is who I am. And so all our spiritual practice is about overcoming that mistaken thought and remembering who we really are, and vibrating with that perfect light, with that perfect love, and asking that that light and love be one with us. You know, Yogananda used to say to parents about their children, don't always feed them when they're hungry. Don't always give them a coat when they're cold. Don't always help them when they're hot. Let them be tough. Let them become stoic. You know, and then you see the practices of asceticism. You know, in Christianity, they used to whip themselves on the back. You know, Hindus have lied down on bed of nails. You know, people go on long fasts. All these different ways that we have of trying to remember. Don't let the limitations of the body define who we are. And so we want to tune into that perfect vibration. There's a story of a friend of mine who's very, very seriously on the spiritual path, has made the spiritual path her entire life. And she's always talking about these teachings, and she lives these teachings. And so we all, you know, for like most of us, I know I'm a soul. I know I'm God's perfect image. And we say it all day long. We read it. These are our teachings. And yet she was on the freeway, and she almost got into a head-on collision, and she just screamed. And she said, somewhere in my chakras, I thought I was this body. You know, even though I tried to intellectually tell myself I am not this body, when this moment came, I thought I was this body. My true belief was that I was this body and something was going to happen to it. And there's a story in the autobiography of a yogi, you may remember, of this sadhu who was wandering along a riverbank, and the police thought he was a criminal. So they were chasing at him, they were yelling him, stop, stop, and he was indifferent to the police. So he just kept walking. The police came behind him, and they hatcheted off his arm. And he stopped walking. He picked up his arm, he put it back on like this, and it reattached itself. And he said to the police very calmly, I'm not the criminal you seek. You know? Now, that sadhu, there was no part of him that didn't know that he was 100% a spiritual being. Part of God. There was no part of him that thought he was just a human and just an ego. So how do we bridge that gap between screaming on the freeway and reattaching our arm? You know, because we can't really do it with our intellect. We can't do it just thinking. So what do? We pray with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul. And we do the techniques that we've been taught, how to bring our energy deep into our innermost center, Kriya Yoga, stilling the mind, concentrating on God, on one of His aspects, in this case, perfect love. With our devotion, with our techniques, we pray that God come to us, that we receive Him, we attune ourselves to a greater reality. And if we do that, then He can come to us as love, as perfect love. And that's how we are able to show perfect love, because what is God? God is love. God is bliss. God is wisdom. So in meditation, when we can receive His bliss, His wisdom, His perfect love, only then would we ever be able to give that love out to others. There's another very famous quote from the Bible that we often use. For those who received Him, for those who received that Christ consciousness, that Kushtasta Chaitanya, for those who received Him, gave them He the power to become the sons of God. We must receive God first in our hearts. And then once we have that inner experience, we can share that experience with others, because that's His teaching. He's saying, be perfect, go love perfectly. And what did Yogananda say? Meditate, experience God within yourself, and then go and do seva, then go and do service. Feel God flowing through you as you work. Don't, like an ego, try to grab on to the results of that. Let him flow through you. Let his light flow through you. Become an emissary of light on the planet. You know, all the great masters have said, receive God in your heart and then go and share him with others. Lahiri Mahashaya, when he was up in Ranikat at Babaji's cave, again, autobiography of a yogi, he was in samadhi for like 8 or 9 days, and when he came out of samadhi, he said, Babaji, please let me stay with your band of chelas and let me be with you. He said, no, you have to go back to Benares. You have a family, you have a job, you're a householder. Take what you have received and give to others. Reintroduced Kriya Yoga from Benares. He gave it freely. Look how many lives he changed our lives. And then Yoganandaji, when he was young, he just wanted to be in the Himalayas. God said, no, go to the West. Sri Yukteswar trained Yogananda to go to the West. Swami Kriyananda was with Yogananda. All I want to do is be in the ashram and meditate. He said, sorry. Your job is to edit, to teach, to lecture, and that's what you'll be doing in this lifetime. And he added, living for God is martyrdom. So let's strive for that perfect love. Find it within. And then be a channel of that perfect love for others. And the quote that Serena read about Krishna, 1 in 1,000 seek me. Aren't we the lucky ones sitting here who are ones of those thousands that are seeking him very actively? And so with all our energy, with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul, let's put our feet firmly on the spiritual path. Be committed to it. And then God's perfect bliss and love can be ours. And hopefully, in a very short time, we will be one of the even few who perceive God as he truly is. God bless you.
I will also share a few thoughts. As the reading Surina read, and also they just mentioned about it, out of 1,000, one seeks, and then out of those thousands who seek, only one. Before we give this to our analytical mind, then we start calculating. I said, oh boy, that is like 1 in a million. That's not so quite encouraging. But as she sort of hinted at that, we already are one of those thousands. The first 1,000 is sort of taken care of. But still, there are more thousands we have to work on it. So what is it that Krishna was saying? No? It's like one of the thousands who are seeking is going to receive. I think the way to look at it more positively is like he's saying it is not something like a side activity. Like many times when we see also here, no, I'll do it when I retire. No, he's saying like this is a choice. This is a life choice that we can consciously make. And that it is like that, no? Like many times if you look around also, when somebody wants to become a doctor, their life sort of revolves around that sort of occupation. Everything that they do sort of make sure that central theme of their life is accommodated. Many times they choose spouses who are also sort of either in the same profession or the same thing. If you want to become spiritual, it's sort of a profession. We have to embrace it with all our hearts. And it is not just about the morning and evening meditation. Certainly, that is a very, very, very instrument part of our practice, our sadhana, as the path that we have chosen. But it has to go and come and become part of everything that we do also. There was a saint in Maharashtra. I talk about him many times in the satsang. His name is Tukaram. And he was also a poet. And he had written many poems. And then the way his poems came about was his students or followers will come to him and ask him questions about their lives and something that is bothering to him. And then as a response to that question, he would write something which is also addressing that situation and giving some more wisdom to those. And one of his followers who came and he says, sir, I have also written something. Can I read it out for you? I said, sure. And he read it out, and then Tukaram was not impressed. He said, listen, his name was Santu. Santu, just because you put God's name in a poem doesn't actually make it very beautiful. It has to have something which is more tangible. It has to have a touch of truth. It has to have wisdom. So he said, okay, but how do I do that? He said, look around, whatever you do, and then from there you will draw your inspiration. But he said, and his profession was, he was an oilman, meaning in those days he would just work with animals and produce oil. He said, that is my life. How can I find inspiration there? He said, one day you will find inspiration even in that environment. And yes, it was right. After a few months, he again comes back and says, sir, I have one more for you. Can I read it out for you? And I said, okay. And then he talks about his animals, he talks about oil, he talks about the process of oil making, and that eventually leads to some things which is very pearls of wisdom. And then Tukaram says, yes, today you have become really great poet. And the point of this story, again, I want to say is like everything we, as Dayaji also mentioned, like we practice our techniques, we practice Kriya Yoga, we sit in silence, because all these techniques have the capacity to bring us to that realization, or at least give a glimpse of it, that we are beyond this body. There is something more which is inherent in every one of us. I am a soul, we've read it, but can we say by experience? And that's why we practice this in the morning and evening meditations, so that we get a glimpse of that when we go into that stillness. But then Krishna says that, then that will make you one of those 1,000. And now if you want to become that one who is chosen among that 1,000, you have to take that experience and then take it into your daily life, just the way Tukaram asked Santu to do it. What prevents us from doing that? Is it many times when we say, no, oh, I like this spiritual life, but outside the world, out there, the world is just too difficult. And in a sense it is true also, but it is also because we have so many connections there. Like the moment we get there, we just lose control. It's like, oh boy, what just happened? I was just very quiet and centered and everything is pulling me out. We let it pull also. There is another funny story that Master used to say. I'll quickly try to, probably you know all this. This was about, again, a disciple who was a very advanced disciple, but he had too many responsibilities in the ashram. So he went to his master and said, sir, just too many work here, so I have to go and then find some quiet place where I can just meditate. I said, okay, go. Guru was smart enough. So this guy, he was a very sincere disciple. He just took a couple of his loin cloths and then went and then found a place to meditate. First night, he sleeps, wake up, and find out that a mouse has started eating one of his loin cloths. I said, what, Lord? Like I came here just to worship you, and then now you're taking my loincloth also. So while one of the villagers was passing by, he saw he was like, sir, what is the problem? He said, see, the mouse is a problem. Then he said, like, why don't you take a cat? I said, okay, but who will feed the cat? He said, don't worry, I'll bring milk every day. Few weeks happen and he says, it's a hassle to bring milk every day. So he comes and says, I can bring it, but you see, it's not possible every day. I have one more idea. What? Why don't you take a cow? And I said, okay, but who will give me a cow? I have a cow, I'll give you. And so now he has a cat, he has a cow, and the cow also needs food. So he brings some children from the village and said the children are taking the cow out, and then villagers say, well, this is not happening. So the sarpanch of the village comes and then says, sir, we all respect you and then we want you to be here, but you can't take our children like this. We need them at our home also. They say, but what do I do? The cow needs to be fed. He says, why don't you have children? I said, I will. Sarpanch says, I can give you my daughter. And now he is thinking seriously that this is a possibility. Then his guru appears like, what happened? You have problems sweeping the ashram, and here you are having your own children and cow. And then he said, oh master, yes, you are right. This is all just for a rag. And then he goes back. and then happily also does his ashram duties and all. No? Our minds play all these tricks, trying to create like, yeah, the reality around us is just not perfect for me to become one and that thousand. We have that capacity. If in the morning, in our sadhanas, we did it, we can do it whenever it is required. It has to be done in an exact situation that God has placed us. God is not unfair in any ways. He exactly gives us, each one of us, where we need to be. The only challenge is, can we choose in that present moment to be that presence and not the ego? The basic meditation technique, in some time we will start this class today. Some of you probably will go for that class also. The first technique that we teach is the Hong Saw technique. In English it says, I am He. In our meditation, that is what we are getting closer at. We also conclude the sessions many a times saying that you can practice this throughout the day, whenever you get a chance. And this is an extremely important practice. The technique itself is such a simple thing, but we are talking about the profundity of it. It is a great reminder. The moment you remember, even when you are doing something, the mantra, Hong Saw, I am He, you have that opportunity to pause and see, well, is it the reality for me now? Or is it, I am Amit at this moment, or I am the ego? And if you realize that, oh, I am the ego now, then you have the choice to change it so that God works in that instant. We want to experience both these realities. Many times we said, oh, I don't want these things. I don't want to be angry. I don't want people when they come and get angry at me. There was another saintly person, and he was saintly, but the more saintly you get, I guess, you also attract people who will be more negative towards you or more criticism towards you. And he had a couple of critics, and one of them was very big critic. He would write and he would say many things. Finally, one day the critic dies, so his disciple very happily comes to his master and said, Sir, your problems are over, your critic is dead. But he becomes a little grave, serious, and says, this is not good. He was one of my best friends. He was the one who would challenge me. And that's what we want to look at. Life challenges are super important, especially when we talk about being a spiritual warrior. If we are serious about becoming that one in 1,000, then we want to invite, not necessarily invite in that sense, because whenever we are touched, we get a glimpses of, oh, how that ego, this whole thing, I've read about you in the books and now I find you. And that is the challenge. That is the time when we can actually practice. When we find that, and then when we come back to that mantra of Hong Saw, we have a choice now. We see that ego demanding our attention. We have our experience in our meditation where I am more than this. And then when we choose consistently again and again, going back to that reality that no, I am He. And then that will be the transcendence. That is a spiritual practice. Very short, very easy, just a consistency from doing this over and over and again. And we shall do it with all the techniques and what this power that Master has given to us and appeal to us and to the best of our abilities till we reach there, till we become that one among those remaining thousands. Joy to you.